Hi everyone, Leslie Rogalski here, Creative Director for the BEADSMITH, with another Facebook Live. First, I do want to give a shout out to anyone affected by the storms that came through, and hope you guys are all in one piece or getting yourself back. We lost power for about 5 hours and had a tree come down. So luckily today I get to focus on beads, especially some very cool beads. These little treasures are called fixer beads. You have heard me talk about these before in capturing a Rivoli or a cab, but today I want to show you how just a couple of them can act as a extra structure for some really fun ways to make some jewelry. So I want to point out that there's 2 different kinds of fixer beads. One, vertical holes. That means that the holes go through from bottom to top, and I want you to notice the little channel that goes along the back. So these holes come this way. These are the ones we're going to use today. The other ones have horizontal holes. They run parallel to the little channel, and as you can see, it leaves the top smooth. You're not coming through. But for today's project, the vertical fixers are what we want because they let us use the fixer bead as a structural element from which we're going to dangle super easy little Superduo components with some 8s and 11s. Of course, I guess the main ingredient are these beading hoops. They're called. These are 30 millimeter. They come in 20, 30, and 40 millimeter. And one of the things I like about these is for this project, you can carefully pull one end out and string some beads onto the hoop. Alright, so let's get started. Oh, by the way, this tutorial, like all our tutorials for Facebook Live, can be found on beadsmith.com/ilovebeads under Fixers and Superduos. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to start with a size 10 needle, because the smallest bead we're going to use are 11s. I have 2 colors of 11s, a size 8. This is for a pair of earrings. I have 2 vertical fixers. You'll need 16 Superduos. I'm just using pale bronze gold. I love that color. A couple ear wires, 2 hoops, and about 28 inches of beading thread. I'm using Fireline, my favorite. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is pick up 2 Superduos and an 11 8 times. And I'm going to refer to the black as my color A and the silver as my color B. So remember to check both holes in any multi-hole beads. I did a pre-check, but you can, when you string them, you can just give a look-see. Make sure you can see daylight through the holes. So 2 Superduos and an 11. And we're going to do that 4 times for a total of 8 Superduos. One, 2, and another 11. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. We're going to pull it down to the end. I'll leave a tail of 3 or 4 inches. I'm leaving enough tail to thread on a needle and weave in as soon as I do this, which is tie it into a knot. Somebody's already said, where are your rings? It's too hot. I can't wear them. Okay, so you've tied your thread into a knot. Now I'm going to take my tail, string it on a needle, and weave it in. I don't want that to get in my way. Here's my needle threading tip again. Flatten the tip of your thread, pull it down till it's like a poppy seed size. Bring the needle to the thread, right through. I've done this before, so you may not get it through on your first try, but I bet you will on your second. Okay, I am just going to sew through a few beads away from the knot. This is my tail thread. And then you can either do a thread zap or just trim it there. Now, I'm back with my working thread and my needle, and I'm going to sew away from the knot to come out in between two of the Superduos that are next to each other without an 11 in between. Reverse direction and sew through the open hole of the Superduo. Now, between the Superduos where the 11s are, we're going to string 2 8s. And do that all the way around. 2 8s, and then where there's no 11 in the inner ring, we're going to pick up the other color 11. And we're going to continue around the circle. 2 8s. And an 11. Two 8s. Whoops. I got stuck. 2 8s. And an 11. Two 8s and an 11. Now I'm going through the Superduo and coming out between the first 2 8s that I just strung. And now we're going to work our way around and string an 11 in between each of those pairs of 8s. So I'm just going to pick up another of that silver color, and I'm going to sew all the way through here. So you can see it makes like a nice little pip, little point there. I'm going to sew all the way through the beads to the next pair and pick up another 11. And work your way around so that you have that new 11 sitting between the 2 8s that you previously sewed. Makes like a nice little corner element. Kind of squares out the component that we're making. Now this is the last one of the new 11s that I'm adding in between the 8s. And I'm going to sew through to exit the very first 11 that I sewed between the pair of 8s. Like this. So this is going to be the top of your component. And now we're going to add the fixer part. The first thing I want to do is pick up, there are 4 legs that come out of the fixer. I want you to see how this is on here. You can see that there's 2 legs on this side and 2 legs on this side. So that's what we're going to string. And it is just stringing, there really isn't a stitch. So I'm going to pick up an 11, an 8, and an 11. And let's see if I can get a little closer here. I want to work with this on my mat so you can follow how the fixer goes. Remember I showed you that the fixer has a channel in it. The channel has to be parallel to the hoop earring. because the earring is going to sit like this. So I'm going to refer to these two holes as the back and these two holes as the front. But this way, by keeping this parallel to the hoop, when you attach your dangle, the dangle's going to face forward like it is now. So I have my 11, 8, and 11, and I'm going to sew from the inside out through that back right hole of the fixer. And now I'm going to string some beads and sew across parallel to the channel and down the other side to make my second back leg. So I'm going to pick up 2 black 11s and an 8 and 2 black 11s, and I'm sewing in that back hole of the fixer. So now we have this. Now that corner 11 that I said was the top, we're going to sew through following the same direction that we exited from. Just that little 11. Whoop, I didn't string my other leg, sorry. Let's do that first. An 11, an 8, and an 11. And then sew through. So now you have your 2 back legs. You can see the holes in the front are still empty. So coming out of that tip 11, I'm going to repeat this mostly. So I'm going to pick up an 11, an 8, and an 11 for the front right leg, and I'm going to go through the front right hole of the fixer. But in order to create the crisscross that I have on top, I'm going to pick up the 2 black 11s and go through the existing 8. I'm not going to pick up another 8. So you can see I have part of an X starting. Now I'm going to pick up the 2 black 11s and go down through the front left side. And you want to make sure you're pulling this kind of snug. So now you have that nice little adornment on the top, and I have one more leg to sew to attach to my dangle. So I'll pick up the 11, 8, and 11. And again, follow through in that circular motion to sew through that tip 11. There we go. Now the component is actually finished. I'm going to weave my thread in to the dangle itself. I'm going to sew through. Here's a little trick to keep your end secure when you weave things back in. I want to make sure that I'm sewing through the component to exit one of the smaller beads, in this case an 11, and then I'm going to make a little half hitch around the existing thread after that size 11, because this way the hitch won't fit back through the 11 and it'll keep my tail thread that I'm weaving in from slipping out in the direction that I sewed. And I'm just going to sew through a couple more beads. These don't take a lot of tension, so I don't need to sew through again and again, and I'm just going to snip that off. Now, how do we get it on the hoop? Well, if this was a hoop that didn't detach, after you did the back legs, you would position the hoop in there and then finish sewing. But because we have hoops that detach, I want you to look at the back of the housing. And it might be hard to see, but only one side actually pulls out. If you can see on the left, there's sort of little, they're actually like little crimp marks. So the left side of the back of the housing does not come out, but the front side comes out. There's a little bit of a bend in it. I took my chain nose pliers and held this firmly and just kind of wiggled it out. You don't want to misshape your earring. Now, I strung however many are on here. 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 size 8s. Now I'm going to carefully hold the end open and I'm going to slide it in between, let's see here, I'm going to slide it underneath the fixer between the legs. You can see that opening right there. I'm just going to slide that right in. You can see why we want the hoop parallel to this. And now I'm going to string 8s by carefully using this like I would a needle, and I'm going to just poke through the 8s to string 12 more for the other side. I'm almost done. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Look at that. Now I'm going to take my chain nose pliers carefully and very carefully wiggle the hoop back into the housing. There we go. And voila! You just hook your ear wire on. Where's my ear wire? I happen to like these ball end little fish hooks. String it right through. There you go. Pretty fast, right? Now, these hoops the beading hoop wires are slim enough to fit through size 11 beads. So you can have some fun and make little texture if you want. Stash Buster! Woohoo! Beading hoops, Superduos, 11s, 8s, and of course the fabulous fixer beads. And you only need 2 for these. So think how many earrings you can make if you grab yourself a tube of these, right? Any questions? I think I'm on screen now. I know. So everybody be safe, wear your mask, stay inside and do some beading. I'm Leslie Rogowski, and remember, you can find fixers, both vertical and horizontal, Superduos, beading hoops, ear wires, and other quality BEADSMITH beads, tools, and supplies from your favorite bead reseller. Have fun! We love beads! See ya!